After a long week of controversy, Donald Trump and the Trumpets flew away to Saudi Arabia to kickstart their 9-day world tour over the weekend in what I like to call, is that a world tour or your girl's tour? That worked way better in my head. But here's a video of our leaders sword dancing instead. But I'm obviously joking, because the first leg of Trump messes up in countries where he has buildings in was Saudi Arabia, where he met with Muslim leaders. Now, you may remember Saudi Arabia as the kingdom whose multi-million-dollar donations to the Clinton Foundation Trump repeatedly used as a line of attack on Hillary Clinton during the 2016 presidential campaign.
It's a criminal enterprise. These are people that push gays off buildings.
A country, in short, that Trump fans have never been too fond of.
I wonder what the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia will get for its $10 million contribution. Put the witch in the White House and we'll find out.
And you can kind of see all of that manifested as pain and fear on Steve Bannon's face as he finds himself surrounded by a teeming horde of those dangerous Muslims. Maybe he's just repeating to himself, at least they're not Jews. At least they're not Jews. Or maybe, just maybe, he's uncomfortable with the realization that this looks like the start of every one-world globalist conspiracy that ever existed, with 3 billionaires looking maniacal, touching a mystical glowing orb, talking about how they'll probably take over the world. No matter how you look at it, that's the face of a man who just realized that Trump won't actually be his anti-globalist savior as long as the Saudi pockets run deep. Because Steve Bannon and the Trumpet Cucks have to actually mix with these savage barbarians if they want to sign a $110 billion arms deal.
This agreement will help the Saudi military to take a far greater role in security.
And this is terrifying. While we've always been happy to arm Saudi Arabia, even the Obama administration scaled back on some of those sales because of the devastation those US bombs were inflicting on civilians in Yemen. By the way, remember the name Yemen, because in 2017, orange is the new black, and Yemen is the new Syria. But aside from the terrifying, hilarious things also happened. The Saudis did their homework. For example, they had a massive projection of Trump's face on the side of the hotel he was staying at, which is exactly the kind of gaudy, narcissistic bullshit a man-baby like Trump would appreciate. Well, that and all the gold. Or the whole treating women as a second-class citizen thing. Which is a great segue for the Saudis hiring Toby Keith to play an all-male audience in honor of Trump. Which some people criticized and said was awful and barbaric.
Men and women cannot commingle, and therefore women can just not attend this music concert. It is just very, like, 11th century.
I'm afraid I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Jake. If anything, the women of Saudi Arabia were spared from a Toby Keith concert, because Toby Keith is famous for lyrics like,
so then we prayed to Allah with all of our might until those US jets came flying low one night.
You think that's terrible? Just kidding, it gets way worse.
They dropped you bombs down on that holy land, and man, they should have seen them scatter like rabbits they ran.
But all jokes aside, let's talk about the speech about Islam written for Trump by advisor Santa Monica fascist Stephen Miller, the author of The Muslim Ban. It turns out that Miller is actually capable of writing a speech on Islam that doesn't say things like, "We should burn them all to the ground, reduce them all to rubble, and let Allah sort it out." I'm assuming that was in the first draft. The second draft was a little bit better. It was reminiscent of George Bush's terror's biggest victims are Muslims rhetoric, which is true.
Some estimates hold that more than 95% of the victims of terrorism are themselves Muslim.
Very different than Trump's original selling point, which was,
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States.
Trump even was able to take out radical Islamic terrorism from his vernacular, until he messed it up.
That means honestly confronting the crisis of Islamic extremism and the Islamists and Islamic terror of all kinds.
Now, this might seem like a small difference to you. Potato, potato, Islamist, Islamic. But the difference is very significant, especially to the Muslim leaders Trump was addressing. Referring to Muslim terrorists as Islamist acknowledges that terrorism is a bastardization of their religion, whereas saying Islamic suggests that terrorism is an integral part of Islam. But especially hilarious is the reason stated for Trump's blunder. It was because he was tired. The same Trump that attacked Hillary by saying,
and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
Now look, I'm not Hillary's biggest fan, but I believe she did around 122 of these trips, where you're already shitting the bed on the first one. And look, one of the worst parts about this entire trip is, aside from everything, the fact that on the left, we're so desperate to call Trump presidential, and everyone's doing that right now. And then on the right, no one is talking about the hypocrisy that I just mentioned. We're not talking about any of that, and instead we're talking about Melania Trump slapping Donald Trump's hand on the Israeli tarmac. Melania, blink twice if Donald Trump is holding you hostage. I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at HassanDPiker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hun. And this has been The Breakdown.